This is the place to be, and the place to be is the MacAttack Show. One for the money, two for the show. Get yourself ready for the MacAttack Show is about to flow. Sit back, relax, clear your mind, and get ready for some truthful, soulful banner. I am Clyde Dowdy Jr., aka Cool Mac, the VPAD for Bowie State University, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host, the fully transparent one, Miss Jackie J. Mac McWilliams, the commissioner of the CIAA. The Mac Attack is an uptown, downtown, crosstown stroll inside and outside of the resilient CIAA. J. Mac, who do we got on the show today?
It's good to see you, Clyde, Cool Mac. And we've got two great fabulous. Is great fabulous? Can I use both of them on these two gentlemen? I'm just happy that they had time out of their busy days to come see us. We got Tirrell Whittley, who is the CEO and founder of Liquid Soul. They have been a partner of the CIAA and have helped us grow tremendously in our partnership. And then we also have Al Hutchinson, who is the president and CEO of Visit Baltimore, where we'll be moving our tournament to in this 2021 upcoming season, basketball season. So we're just thankful that we have both of them. They are trailblazers in their own right, very well respected throughout the country and in their communities. And it's just a great opportunity for CIAAs to not just have them as business partners, but as just good friends. They're just good, solid men, fathers, dads. I watch them with their kids from a distance. And so we got two great guests, Clyde.
Well, it's amazing that, not amazing, but it's great to have them on the show today and what they do for the community, what they've done for the CIAA. And Tirrell and Al, I'd like you to now talk a little bit about what you guys have done, what you do in this whole new scheme of marketing and promotion and what you're trying to do for the CIAA and the community at large. So we'll start off with Tirrell.
Hey, well, fantastic. Thank you both for having me. I'm super excited to be here and glad to just be with my friends at the CIAA. We so enjoy our relationship and our engagement with you all. So a few years back, we came in and we bidded for some work to actually handle marketing and media with the CIAA. And we went through a great experience with the entire team in Charlotte at the time. And it was exciting just because I'm already an HBCU fan, having attended Florida A&M University, and we've been the sponsor behind several different HBCU football classic, I, of course, was well aware of the CIAA and, of course, the basketball tournament. So I've been a fan, and now I get a chance to work hand in hand with the commissioner and others on bringing it forward. And so we came in and we pitched how we could assist the CIAA with marketing and social media, publicity, with a different media strategy that could help boost not only attendance, but of course hotels and restaurant engagement. So just the overall economic impact, but also how we can work with the additional partners, being Van Wagner, on sponsorships and ultimately really driving a higher level of engagement and intentionality around the CIAA, not just the basketball tournament, but really across the board against all of the championships, against the sports. And I'm proud that we've been able to maintain this relationship here for several years now. And as we continue to roll forward, I'm looking forward to coming to Baltimore and all that has to offer. Of course, this has been an interesting dynamic, an interesting year with COVID. But I'm excited about the potential and the possibilities. As a matter of fact, we've been in conversations around esports. I'm not sure how much I can talk about that today, but that's kind of the next frontier for us with the CIAA. And so I'm excited to be here as a partner and to be joined with Al, of course, and what he's been doing in Baltimore and all the great things that they have to offer.
We're going to get back to you on that esport thing. Al, tell us how now you have been involved with the CIAA.
Well, let me give respect first to the commish, right? I'm going to start off with the commish. Thank you for inviting me, commish. And Brother Clyde, you know how we roll. I appreciate you. And Tirrell, good to see you, man. And let me just say thank you for inviting me on the call today, and very excited about the conversation. You know, CIAA with me goes way back. I grew up in the great town of Richmond, went to the great Maggie Walker High School, the great Bobby Danridge and the great Willie Lanier. Came from those schools and all HBCU guys. and right next door to Virginia Union University. You know, I used to run down the hill doing football practice, and VUU is right across the railroad track. So I went to the CIAA tournament in Richmond as a youngster, and also went to it when I was in Hampton as well as in Norfolk. So I have a lot of history with the tournament as a young guy growing up in the city of Richmond. But from a professional standpoint, as I came to Baltimore, I'm a sports guy day one, played a lot of sports, but I have a lot of respect for the CIAA as a conference. And I sell cities. I'm a destination marketer, is what I call myself. And I'm always looking for great opportunities to showcase my city in the best way. Now, when you think about Baltimore being a predominantly Black city, you think about CIAA representing HBCUs, predominantly African-American students and student athletes. To me, there was no better fit than to go after the CIAA to come to Baltimore. It was like hand in glove to me. It made a lot of sense, both from an economic standpoint. Late February, you can almost shoot a cannon through Pratt Street in Baltimore and won't hit anybody in Baltimore. There's nothing moving. So it made a lot of sense to go after a great conference, great basketball, but also just great friendship and fellowship. And so this was an easy decision for us, but I'm very fortunate and grateful that the commish and the 12 presidents, Dr. Bro, Clyde, under her leadership, took interest and confidence in the city of Baltimore and Visit Baltimore and everything we had to offer. So we're extremely excited about hosting in 2021. Obviously, we're all dealing with the pandemic, but I'm optimistic. We're going to do it the right way. We got to respect the virus, but I think we can manage it and have basketball, have folks fellowshipping and convening in the right way. And so that's the way we're trying to approach this. And I'm humbled by having an opportunity to host the conference and looking forward to a partnership and being very collaborative moving forward. So again, I'm just very thankful to be a part of this conversation.
Yeah, I would say that we have been fortunate as a conference to identify partners. I mean, Tirrell, I remember you coming up here and us sitting down, and I think we talked more about our family, friends, and church than we did, and found kind of the common ground of our missions based on your organizations, even both organizations that just fit very well for the CIAA. And Clyde, they're quite humble men. Let me just be clear, because Tirrell, you won Emmys, Grammys. I don't know. You've been on stage, and Al has been across the country in this industry over 20-something years and knows communities like you should know communities. And I think that's what makes the relationship, it's not a siloed thinking relationship. They think broad about how they can help their partners grow. And we're trying to do it on both sides, of the aisle so that we all can be better. So I just appreciate the work that you all do, not just with us, but what I see you do and how you care about the partners that you have, not just to grow your business, but to help others grow their business and do it really well.
And that's a great point, Jackie, because both of them, you just mentioned, I was reading over their bios and I'm going like, I was blown away. But you sit down and talk to them, you would never know that they have done these great things and they just right down to earth and they're trying to help. And Al, on Pratt Street in February, you fire that cannon. The only people you're going to hit is the people trying to get inside from the cold. So, so you're right about that. And, Al, Tirrell, how are you guys managing doing COVID? Because what you'll do is marketing, and this whole COVID pandemic thing has really turned the scales in a different direction. So how are you guys managing what you do?
Yeah, it's an interesting question for me. A lot of our business is around film, television, and sports. And historically, for over almost 20 years now, that's been the arena that we played in. So you can imagine we were just coming out of the CIAA basketball tournament. I was getting ready to move into Final Four with the NCAA, and I get a call from the NCAA, kind of a quiet call, and they're saying, hey, man, you might want to cancel Christmas. And that was when we knew COVID was about to really have a deep, deep impact, is when they said, hey, we're not going to move forward with March Madness. And as you can imagine, then the dominoes began to fall, whether it was all, the NBA, and then theaters shut down. And so for us, March was probably one of my most interesting months because I had to really look at my business and say, wow, this is things have shifted, and I now have to become a student and really develop the art of the pivot. Luckily, we've had such a broad-based engagement. As a matter of fact, I had just finished producing a movie too, right there in January. So it was all kind of mystical how it all kind of came together in that 1 month in March. And I said, okay, how do we flip things around? Well, I give God the glory. I mean, things just fell into place, and a large software company, which is Salesforce, came on as a client right away, and they said, hey, we got you. And I said, well, hey, we can't fly out there to San Francisco. It was like, no worries, you guys work remote. From there, other clients began to pack in. The CIAA said, hey, we're going to stay in pocket with you. You stay in pocket with us. And so we were able to manage and maintain. And now it's interesting where at one moment Disney was like my largest client, and now it's Salesforce. And now we're one of the few African-American agencies that has a biopharmaceutical client, which we just signed. And now I'm over here working on an RFP for CVS. Now we've always had, General Mills and Walmart and a lot of those other great clients, Coca-Cola, but a lot of their spending was kind of in flux. So I really had to make some quick adjustments, but I'll tell you this, my faith is tremendous. And the thing that I did is I said, look, let me stay calm, number one. Number two, let me stay healthy. I am a cancer survivor. And so from that vantage point, I said, hey, let me concentrate on social distancing and the right health practices. Let me make sure that I'm staying as close to the science on this versus what comes over the tube, because I can understand what the facts are. And then from there, it was just a matter of how do I help the people around me adjust as well. I'm sure you know this, Al, as the leader, everyone's pointing to you to kind of give them some headway on where do we go and how do we move and what should we be doing. And so it's interesting. I would show up to some of our agency calls, which is our Monday morning calls. And instead of just jumping into the business, I started doing things like, hey, let's spend the first 10 minutes meditating. Let's take 20 seconds and just breathe. Let me play a song and some music for you. So I tried to do things to really help people, kind of pull themselves into the space to say, listen, we can be focused. We can still have fun. We can keep a smile. We can still do work, but we'll find our way out of this. And the interesting part, Jackie, is that as much as I was trying to help them, I was also trying to help me.
Yeah, I get it.
Tell myself, yeah, okay, let me stay focused. Let me breathe. Let me try to emulate these things so that it gives a certain calm in the midst of this storm. So I'm pleased and blessed to say that, no one has missed a meal. We've been able to maintain our staff. As a matter of fact, we've added on some staff members. I'm getting ready to actually do a couple promotions, and a couple people are going to see some bumps. So I feel like we've done the right things this year, if you want to call it the pivot, but I think it's actually just the course that we needed to be on to keep the trajectory moving forward. And even as Al mentioned, even in sports, we recognize that things are going to come back. So for us right now is how do we properly position ourselves to be at the forefront of engagement and not trying to catch up from the rear. Yeah. So I'm being very forward thinking at this juncture around kind of what's the next layer of engagement.
Well, I would tell you, both you and Al, the start of this whole COVID, and Tirrell, I think we talked within the first few weeks, and Al, we immediately talked, and you all have been a saving grace for me just on the leadership side and talking through how to manage. I mean, and then what I said to my team, and Clyde and I talked to this is when you see where true partnerships are realized, right, and how people really care about not just what they can get from you, but what we bring together to get through and weather through the storm. And so I've appreciated those conversations to say, look, I know y'all, I'm going into a board meeting and this ain't looking really good. But somehow I got to figure out how do I maintain the relationship with you? Because when we get to the other side of this, I know we're going to be better for it. But right now we're kind of stuck. And so I just want to just publicly say that I appreciate that we don't have just great partners. We have people who understand the business and are willing to take the risk with a partner along the right way. So just thank you for that, you and Al.
And Tirrell, you know, you talk about leadership and having direction. And as leaders of my department, people have a lot of great questions, but I don't have a lot of good answers. So they come into me with the same thing. They said, what direction we going? And I said, we're going that way.
Yeah. Let me add one other quick thing. I know Al is getting ready to jump in here. You know, I sent my daughter off to Florida A&M this fall. And I am, of course, that's my alma mater. I love my university, as well as I know all the CIAA graduates love their university. But more than anything, I love seeing students excel and make that transition to that next layer in life. I was able to help my niece actually get accepted into VUU. And out of all of the stuff that happens, and, you know, one of my greatest joys has been helping her get back into college after, you know, she's now 25, going on 26, has a child. She's a single mom. She had been out of that space. As a matter of fact, she wasn't even thinking about going to school. But impressing upon her that her education matters now more than ever. And so for our student athletes and students that are still engaged at Bowie State and other universities, the critical point here, even for my daughter, is to say, while we may all be going through something, don't lose sight of what's most important, which is you got to get that education to get out here and be competitive and get what God has for you. So that part of it, more than anything, Jackie, I stay in pocket with the CIAA, but we know that we're doing this for the benefit of these young people. That means a lot to me.
Yeah.
And Al, you know, you have a lot of history with your son who just graduated and moving on too.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, I'm Tirrell here. He's really putting a lot on the table for us to think about. And you know, I look at COVID. One of my biggest takeaways from going through the pandemic, it just reminds me of the history that as Black folks, what we've always had to overcome. Right? We've been persistent. We've had to fight the good fight throughout history. And I'll often think about what my grandmother would tell me, what my mother, who I lost 12 years ago, that you got to continue to fight, right? And then as Black folks, our history, we can't let something like a pandemic push us back, because we've overcome too much. And that's what I try to instill on my son and my daughter, that you got to always show up. You got to show up, you got to fight, you got to do the right things. And, you know, the pandemic, I tell my team, I have good days, I have bad days. Yeah. And I think it's important as a leader, you got to be vulnerable. You can't just fake people out and they think that every day is a great day for you. So I try to show my vulnerability during this time period, but I also want to lead. I want to be optimistic, but I want to be honest, and I don't want to be fake. And I think during a pandemic, it helps us to become the greatest leaders, because you think about it, when times are great, anybody can lead. If you got, you know, 12 great women basketball players and 10 great men basketball players, anybody can coach those stars, but it's always challenging when something happens, adversity hits. And that's what I think I'd look at during this time period. I'm trying to become a better leader today. I'm trying to become a better husband today, a better father today. And I think that a crisis helps all of us to really get to that point to do better. So this is a time period unlike anything else we've ever seen, right, as people. But if we approach it the right way with the right mind, and bring our best self to the table every day, I think we have a really shot of doing great work, doing a really challenging time, and maybe the most challenging time we've ever experienced as adults.
Hey, Al, you brought up something that made me think, and I'm sorry to interject so quick, but
no, go ahead, Tirrell.
When you talked about transparency and being vulnerable, I thought about as Black Lives Matter began to really spread. And my dad is 76, and he had a conversation with me, and he said, "Look at here, son. I done been through Vietnam, and I done been through civil rights. I done, I was born in 1944, Jim Crow. I done seen a whole lot." And he says, but right now, he's like, the pressure that some of you must be under.
Yeah.
He's like, this is just so much. And he says, luckily, he says, look, I'm retired, I'm in my space, but watching you all that are trying to lead and go through these things, it must really have an impact. And I remember telling him that, yeah, Dad, like, I'm not okay right now. Like, and I had to tell my staff a few days, like, and I had to give people mental breaks, mental vacations, and just take a day, because you got to be okay in the midst of all of these things. We got to try to, like you said, be honest with ourselves, because depression is real, and anxiety is real, and it goes from a manifestation into a physical form quicker than you can imagine if you don't stop and catch some of those things. So I appreciate you saying that, because I think we've all had to really, especially as Black men and Black women, we have to come to real grips. My wife said, she said, I ain't cooked this much. She's like, brother, this is a lot. I'm cleaning going on around here.
She trying to get you out the house, right, Tirrell?
Right. She's like, your daughter's in my face constantly. She's like, woof. I was like, yeah,
No,
this is a lot. We got to work through it.
that's why these conversations are so important. And then Jackie and I have had these conversations a lot, because all of us are leading people, and the question always becomes, who's leading me? Who's feeding me? Right. And during a really tough time period, because you don't want to talk down, right? All of us got our challenges of the day. You can't go down with your conversation. And I think it's really important to have these kind of conversations and relationships with Jackie and Clyde, Tirrell. We have to help each other, because the stress of the day is extremely challenging. And you, not only the stress is there, but you got to also try to perform, both for your team and for your family. And so I really value having some go-to people that I can have an honest conversation with. They're not going to judge me. I can let my hair down, and I can be vulnerable. I think as a leader, that's so critical. And a lot of leaders, they don't want to do that. And I think that's a downfall.
This is some sound advice that you gentlemen are offering, especially. I just had this conversation this morning, because the mental pressure affects you physically, and then you feel that, you're not getting anywhere. It's like Groundhog Day every single day, especially where we're communicating through Zoom, where we used to be able to get in person more often. And I tell my staff that adversity, and Al, you use the word adversity, and I think that's a great word. Adversity will make you or break you. You bend with it, but you can't let it break you. So we got to move on. And then, like Jackie always says, we're going to come out of this and we're going to have a better time. We'll get back to our new normal, or the new now, which I like to say instead of the new normal. This is our now. We have to manage it, and we're trying to manage it the best we can. And now, how is downtown Baltimore managing all of this? I know Tirrell talked about his environment, what you're doing, because economics is the key to what you do down there.
Yeah, it's tough, Clyde. I mean, my business, we're so dependent on hotel tax money, and nobody's moving right now. Nobody's traveling. And so the travel and tourism industry is decimated, not only here in Baltimore, but around the country. And, folks are out of work. I had to let 10 full-time people go, 42 part-timers go, cut out salaries with everyone on our team. And when you start talking about letting people go, it gets real personal, because you're letting folks go who have rent, have mortgages, they're sending their kids to school, they're trying to keep their lights on. It's a tough deal, and that happens. And then you got to also try to be big enough to continue to lead. And then how do you pivot to help the industry? So we made some adjustments early on in the pandemic. We delivered hand sanitizers to a lot of small businesses, some nonprofits who were struggling with getting hand sanitizers. At one point, you couldn't get it. So we're trying to help them. But also people, small businesses trying to find finances. We bought some of our federal senators on a Zoom call to help them locate money for some of the small businesses. Where do you go? And then we brought our health commissioner on a call with a number of our members just to talk about where they go for health care. And a city like Baltimore is a lot of haves and have-nots. And it was important for us I felt that we needed to pivot, but we needed to be the leaders with the information. So we've been trying to do a lot of that, Clyde, to really be a clearinghouse for a lot of our small businesses, a lot of our Black-owned businesses, just try to be strong for them during a very, very critical period. The industry is slowly coming back. Our hotels are back open. We have still a few that are still closed. But like a lot of urban hubs, a number of restaurants have closed down. People are out of work and may not get back to their industry. We employ 86,000 people in travel and tourism in the Baltimore metropolitan area. And I would say probably 75% of those folks are out of work today. So the industry is different, and that's not just Baltimore. That's DC, Philly, Boston, New York. Most urban hubs are Charlotte, Commish, are feeling the pressure. But we got to hang tough, and hopefully I'm praying for November the 3rd next week. I just want to get there, and November 4th, because we got to get a change, because this right here, boy, this is not sustainable right here. This is a tough one. But we're gonna keep fighting every day.
Yeah, we need leaders like you both in the spaces that you are in, and we need you to be visible in the space. And we say that about ourselves, Clyde and I. There's some things that we just don't want to do, but we know we got to do it for the good of it all. And I think we have a sense of responsibility to our communities. I think that's what's been hard for us in sports, particularly in HBCUs. And this might be for you all as well. We have to think differently based on the people that we serve, in the communities that we're in. So it's not just as easy for us to pop up and play games when our schools are right in the communities that are being impacted the most. So, we're on this COVID-driven, the Black Lives Movement. All of this is just working, against us. And we're trying to make sure that we are doing all we can in the midst of it to be as creative as we can and to work with our partners to figure out ways to sustain. That's the thing, to sustain until we can get through the clouds of this. So we're looking for it. Matter of fact, I gave my team off on the 3rd. There will be no work on the 3rd. You need to focus, make sure you're voting, make sure you're reaching out, make sure you take some breaths. You don't even got to turn the TV on. I just want to know who is it on the 4th, so we'll know how we can move forward. And I think that's the bigger thing. No matter who it is, we've got to be able to move forward collectively as a community. And I feel, and maybe you can tell me, I have a sense that our communities and our businesses are talking more and trying to collaborate more. I love the promotion of Black businesses. That has been critical to me since the day I walked in this office, that we will have minority-owned businesses partnered with us, and we will work in the communities to ensure they have access and opportunity as best as we can. And so how are you all, and what are you thinking about what you're seeing in the industry? And Al, you just said you guys are trying to make sure that these businesses are thriving, because a lot of them are not and may not make it through COVID. But my hope is that most of them will be able to come back at some point.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna lean in on something there too about just the HBCU side of this. I actually feel like there's great opportunity in the window, and it gives us a space to be very creative. I'll tell you this: when Deion Sanders went over to Jackson State, let me tell you something. I was paying very, very close attention. I know Deion been trying to get down to Tallahassee for a long time, specifically Florida State. And when he made that decision, he made a very vocal decision to say, you know what, if y'all not gonna call my number, somebody else will. And so now we've been hearing that Ocho Cinco wants to come to FAMU, and I was talking to some of the CIAA schools saying, hey, if there was a former NFL or NBA player or someone that you didn't think you could get, now might be the moment to make that call. Because we're in a window now where we want to put HBCU sports on the highest level of podiums, so that all of these brands, when they're talking to me about, hey, we want to invest in African Americans and African American students and engagement, I'm pointing them down this lane to say, here's where you need to be looking. We just helped VUU launch their global campus, and we have Roland Martin, who, as a matter of fact, is speaking tomorrow. Right after that is Michael Eric Dyson, and then we have Larry Miller, the former, he's the chairman of Brand Jordan, coming, and Jalen Rose. And so I was, speaking to the president and saying, hey, this is the moment. Like, if we be, if we can be creative, and if we can look at how we can impact lives. My pastor would say, you have not because you ask not.
Ask not. Mm-hmm.
So now is the moment to put those kind of requests on the table. Not to say that it's always going to deliver a positive result, but quite frankly, we ain't got nothing to lose.
Right.
In a lot of our communities, there's a tremendous amount to be gained, especially given some of the health disparities and economic issues that surround us day in and day out. But we keep pressing, and we keep, as you said, Al, we got to keep going.
Yeah.
Other people, now is that moment to take advantage of it.
I think one of the interesting things about the pandemic and where you're on that we're reinvesting in our Blackness, right? And I think the social injustice movement has put a brighter spotlight on we need to do better, and we need to use our platforms to speak out against these injustices in our particular communities. And so the pandemic is one thing, that's a health crisis, but the human crisis is over 400 years old. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I think one of the bigger outcomes is going to be from COVID, that we've been able to double down on our Black genius and double down on how we need to reinvest and really uplift the gems in our community. So I've been trying to use my voice and use my platform to help my industry, because my industry has not done a good job when it comes to uplifting and promoting people of color in C-suite. We don't do a good enough job of recruiting Black and brown talent from HBCUs, putting them into travel and tourism. We don't spend our money with African American owned businesses. So I think in my particular community, travel and tourism, I've joined several leaders, happen to be African American, that we're trying to use our voice and using our platform to help broaden the case and change all these injustices that's been a part of our community for far too long. And I think, we see it in sports, people are double downing on it. And, with what Deion did, I think that's a big economic move, but that's a big brand move too, to encourage more young Black men and women to go back to HBCUs, that voice, reinvest in that. So I really truly think, man, this time period that we're living in, this is unique. And if we don't take advantage of it, then we're really wasting the moment, because we may not see this again. And this is our civil rights movement that we didn't live in, and we can really go and do something really special that we feel good about and tell our kids about.
Yeah. I tell you this, Al, I surely wasn't thinking about Jackson State for nothing.
I get it. Yeah.
All of a sudden, Jackson State is now on the mark.
Yeah, they're relevant, right? And I think, people use that, and to your point, Tirrell, there are going to be other giants out there that go to another HBCU and do something great. And so I applaud Deion for stepping out. That's Coach Prime. So I get it. That's a great move for him and for Jackson State.
Don't let my family tell you they ain't on the map, because they Jackson State. They'll fight you right today.
Wow, you talk about the moment, and the moment is now, and now is the moment that never ends. And during this COVID period, we all found out something about ourselves that we normally couldn't find out, because Tirrell, you're all over the country. Al, you're working with all these folks in tourism. So Tirrell, besides in the kitchen eating up everything now, and your wife's in there cooking, what else have you learned about yourself during this period?
Well, that's a great question. So I had to really dial in and kind of dive into myself, let a man examine himself is what the word says. And I had to spend some moments with myself to really reestablish some hobbies and establish some things above and beyond work. I think what I began to notice is that a lot of who and what I was about was aligned with what I do, not necessarily exactly who I am. And so for me, I've been in this, and I'm gonna be a little bit more transparent. Sometimes we take a lot of things so serious, and there's nothing that will get you to the core of life than you being faced with your mortality.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And now all of a sudden you begin to prioritize in a much cleaner, more crisp
Mm-hmm.
way. And so you said something earlier, Jackie, like, as partners, you get to a point where I'm going to work with the people I want to work with. As a matter of fact, I'm at the juncture now, I don't have time.
Amen to that.
Work with people and pretend with people. And so my attitude has changed considerably. Like if I'm not with you, you kind of know I'm not with you. Like
that's friends too, Tirrell. That's friends too.
Yeah. If we in pocket, we in pocket. But Al, like you said, you get real clear about things because mortality kind of puts that to your forefront. And then, as you said, Clyde, I'm not jet setting and crossing the country and this and that. So, I took up, this may sound crazy, but I took up tactical training. It's something I always wanted to learn about. I'm actually a pretty good shot. And, I went from never picking up a firearm to now owning 4, but I'm going into competitive shooting. But it's also provided me, and this is something that I started to miss, is I'm learning something. I'm learning something new, and that's my new. I mean, I started to realize how much I enjoy learning. When you're in the front of the room and you're constantly teaching and leading, and you're the person with experience, and you're this AD and that, and everybody comes to you for advice. After a while, you get used to, laying out the equity of your experience, knowledge, and expertise. But there's nothing better to me right now when somebody is like, okay, you're messing up. Let me teach you how to do this right. Yeah. Let me help you focus. Help me, right. I'm like, man, like I really, really enjoy learning. And so I'm now picking up new things that will help me, I think, in the long run, but new things that I just want to learn. Now, I'll tell you this final thing. I sent out a note to some friends, about, I don't know, maybe 100 friends, like, hey, everybody, I'm out here doing this. I'm learning this. Y'all free to come with me. Boy, that next class, 20 people showed up. The next class, another 20 people showed up. People were like, I've always wanted to learn something. And I said, well, and these are people that say, hey, I've been around it. I've known it. I've just never been taught. And I said, well, there's nothing better than learning and learning the right way. So for me, that's kind of been the new revelation, is saying, okay, let me clear my space, have clear focus on thought, who I want to be with, what I want to do, what I don't want to do. And then let me learn some new things that can hopefully help me in my life and help me as I progress forward.
Tirrell, when did you turn 50?
I turned 50, well, I'm almost there. I'm 48. So I got a couple more years, and then I'm crossing that mark.
So this is a good segue, because I'm on the call with a bunch of young puppies. So I'm in the 4th quarter of my life. I tell all my friends, it may not be late 4th quarter, but I'm definitely in the 4th quarter. So to your point, Tirrell, I can't waste time. I don't want to be around a lot of counterproductive people, negativity. I don't have that kind of time. I don't have that kind of bandwidth. Right. And so, for me, what I doubled down on during this time period is similar to your story, Tirrell. I really went back and did more reading of things of interest to me that I got away from, like James Baldwin. I grew up on Baldwin. I read Baldwin, but a lot I didn't know about Baldwin. And not only read, but I went to YouTube. That's one of the beauties of social media now. You can go and see some black and white clips of some giants, and really do some really serious learning. One of the books that impacted me early as a senior in high school was an autobiography of Malcolm X, which I've read multiple times. But I went back recently because Lawrence Fishburne did the audio of the book, and I ordered the audio to just listen to it in my car as I'm driving. Lawrence Fishburne, I mean, he has that magnificent voice, and he's going through the book. It's like, that was powerful for me, and I needed that. You leave the office, you're dealing with craziness, and I can plug that in, and I can get away from everything and get into a zone. So that's what I've been trying to do, just do more reading of things of interest to me. And the last thing I haven't done yet, but I want to do, because I'm a big jazz connoisseur, I want to take saxophone lessons. I can't play any instrument at all. My little puppy's name is Coltrane, and I would love to just take sax lessons, and probably won't know how to play a note on the sax, but just something to do to get away and sort of be myself, and let me critique me, but do something that really doesn't mean anything, but just something that I want to do for myself. So.
A jazz picture behind you over there, so I think
Lady Sings the Blues.
Yeah. It's
Lady
Holiday.
That's Lady Day.
And
You've got some nice pictures.
That's Monk right there at the
Monk,
longest.
Monk.
It is.
You know,
and, hey Al, there's a movie I want you to check out if you haven't. It's called I Am Not Your Negro.
I haven't heard great things about it. Yeah,
Yes.
Baldwin. I have not seen that.
well, Tirrell, I'm working on my doctorate in education, and our professor took us to see it when it first came out, the James Baldwin movie. So we sat down, we critiqued it. Listening to you guys is very inspiring. If you guys are approaching the fourth quarter, I'm in overtime because I just turned 62. So I'm trying to get through overtime right now while you guys are trying to get to the fourth quarter. So, I appreciate everything that y'all are doing and continue to do, because like I said, you're extremely inspiring. This conversation uplifting, and I know the folks out there who are listening will get a lot out of it. Tirrell, you talked about life and mortality, and the most important thing about living is life. But most important thing about life is living, and we have to remember that. And I think a lot of folks fall short of understanding that, life is forever, but it's finite. It's very finite. Life goes on, but our lives are finite. So we have to make sure that we do what we have to do with that dash. And learning is special, so intrinsic. When I'm taking my doctorate, it's not about me in compliance and NCA or dealing with the CIAA. It's all about Clyde Dowdy and what I'm getting out of this. So that's very, very important. So on behalf of the MacAttack, we want to thank you. And we're going to ask J Mac to wrap it up and take us away. Go ahead, J Mac.
Clyde, I love you to death. I'm so glad you guys had the chance to be on here, and I've got a lot more insight about you, but just as human beings. And, the whole learning, earning, and returning, you do all of that all the time in your organizations and in your communities and your family. And you're CIAA for life forever. So no matter where you are and where I am, this is a connection I know that we will have forever in our life. So if there's anything we can ever do at any time, and if we just 3 of us need to get, or 4 of us need to have some, as Clyde does with the ADs, a chat and chew. I'm not invited to that call, just so you all know. But we are here to support you and help you however you need to. And I just thank you for being great partners and joining us today. So love you, and we'll be praying that God continues to bless you and encourage you and lift you up during a time that we don't even know what tomorrow is going to be. But today we're just going to take it in and do the best that we can. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
You.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
Awesome.
Be safe and be strong. Take care.
All right. Right back at you.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Take care. Thank you.